All right, gentlemen, as promised, we have a detailed breakdown today. We're going to be discussing why and how Michael Morales knocks the Sonic rings out of Sean Brady at UFC 322. All right, so I said I was going to be releasing breakdown videos for 4 different fights on the main card of UFC 322. It will start today, and I want this slide to serve as a checkpoint just to make sure that we're on the same page, that, like, I own UFC Fight Pass. Here, hold on. You can trust my words whenever I talk about these fights. I'm not just going off of, like, you know, this guy is rated like 4.5 stars, and the other dude is rated 4 stars in UFC 5. Or, I just like this guy more, so I'm just gonna come up with my own justifications on the basis of highlights that I saw following their last fights as to like why I'm making the prediction that I'm gonna make. I actually researched this fight, dude. I watched UFC fights of both of these guys from like 2021. I watched the fights of Michael Morales whenever he had hair no longer than my own, as we're speaking right now. I'll also be providing counterpoints to the arguments that I make because I feel like I have a pretty complete understanding of both of the styles of the fighters that we're going to be talking about. I will not be beefing with anyone in the comment section who does not possess a subscription of UFC Fight Pass either. I'll also use this slide to remind everyone to like, comment, and subscribe. I always kind of put it off because I'm like, oh, well, that's cheap, but I'm definitely not above asking people to like, comment, and subscribe. So make sure that you do that so you don't miss an upload. Leave a comment because I do reply to those, and leave a like because it helps the channel grow. So let's get right into this. So let's talk about the first thing, which is going to be misconceptions surrounding the skill set of Michael Morales. A lot of people don't acknowledge that Michael Morales isn't a pure striker. This fight is going to boil down to be like a striker versus grappler matchup, but it's not going to be an instance of a striker grappler matchup like we saw with O'Malley versus Merab, where we see two guys at like completely different sides of the spectrum. O'Malley has like some jiu-jitsu, right? But Michael Morales actually is pretty competent with the wrestling. He can scramble very well. His get-ups and escapes from bottom are not bad. His sweeps are also there as well. He's good at creating spacing so that he can stand again if you do take him down. And I'm not going to say that he doesn't get taken down, because he does. Adam Fugit took him down a long time ago. In his Dana White's Contender Series performance, he spent a little bit of time on his back against Nikolai Veretnikov, who we know isn't the strongest grappler for 170 by any stretch of the imagination. But for all the times that Michael Morales has been put in a position where he's had to grapple effectively, and he did, we've never seen Brady strike effectively. What is it from like the FaZe Jev freakout where he's talking about Requise? It's like slapping someone with a napkin from a child's birthday party. That's literally what a 7-8 punch combination string from Sean Brady does to his opponents. Even though they're being registered as significant strikes on the strike tally, he outstruck Leon Edwards like 38 strikes to 0 in round 2, complete shutout. But you could never tell just by looking at Leon Edwards on the stool in between rounds 2 to round 3, because Sean Brady has no power. He's as pillow-fisted as they come, truly. But largely, Michael Morales, his grappling is not angled to getting submissions. It's angled at creating spacing so he can return to striking, or if he's that much stronger than his opponent, he'll get some cheeky damage down on the floor before he does return, along with a little bit of control time. But there's not a single reality where Sean Brady is just going to be taking Michael Morales down for free. Like he's going to do nothing about it, or, oh no, he's in on my hips and has his hands locked. What am I going to do? It's over. No, Michael Morales is going to like scramble out of there. He's going to dig an underhook. He's going to look like he's grappled before if Sean Brady inevitably tries to grapple him in this fight. When Sean Brady tries to grapple him in this fight. Now, this part of the presentation was discussed a little bit in the last section of the previous slide, but Morales' counter grappling is a perfect foil to Brady's wrestling offense. What we see is Michael Morales does a really good job of making it so that if he does get taken down or grappled, it's always against the cage, whether it be a clinch sequence that's initiated there to like use the wall to be able to angle off or to build a base so that he doesn't get double legged, or if he does get taken down, he has this way of making it so that it like just so happens that the takedown is completed in a position where he can post on one of his arms and have his back directly up against the fence to again build a base and get up. And he's so physically strong and capable that he's able to do this very well by using the octagon wall as an aid. Brady's striking system is purely designed to reinforce his grappling system. And what I mean by that is he's a volume boxer. He doesn't really get very active with the kicks other than to close the distance from range. And then with his hands, he'll utilize very long punch strings, like maybe 5 to like 8 punch combos. And they're lunging. These blitzes are intended for getting you into the corner of the cage so that he can staple you to the octagon, initiate a clinch, and just kind of grind you out from there and make you work and make you tired. He changes levels from there, or he goes for trips while he's in this clinch with you. And there's something to be said about how he was muscling up and manhandling Gilbert Burns in their fight, but largely, what we're going to have is a dude who uses the cage being at his back as a way to defend grappling, and who has what we can reasonably assume to be bulletproof takedown defense whenever he does have the cage at his back, versus a guy who depends on the cage being at the back of the guy that he's fighting in order to get takedowns. And don't give me that whole, like, Sean Brady is also a big welterweight argument, because, I mean, being stout versus being, like, big, two different things completely. Manipulating a person with a large frame, even as a guy who's heavier than he is in the cage, it's not an easy task. It's the reason why the person who had the most success in controlling Michael Morales in like a clinch or wrestling scenario was actually Neil Magny. And that did end with Neil Magny getting TKO'd because there was a spinning elbow. But the one thing that Michael Morales can't do, though, is give his back whenever he does get clinched up against the fence. Or, God forbid, if he gets taken down and starts to build back up to his feet, he cannot give his back to Sean Brady. And he did that on 2 different occasions against Neil Magny and also against Gilbert Burns. He used like this position, getting grips over the body lock with his back taken to pry the hands off of his waist and rotate off of the cage. But I think that he would potentially even like get backpacked by Sean Brady if he gave him the opportunity to do something like this. It's going to be body triangle city, and Michael Morales is going to be wearing Sean Brady like an MCM. So this is a better example of what I was talking about on the previous slide here. Sean Brady throws punches in volume to end up in a clinch. And if it's off of the cage, he muscles the guy that he's fighting into the cage so that he can hold them there until he can change levels to get a takedown or go for a trip before they make it to the fence or on the fence. When a fighter isn't whelmed by these strikes, which only deal minus 0.1 HP per, and they hold the line, like Bilal Muhammad, they can land some really solid offense in exchange for their bravery. The first part of Brady's game plan in every single fight is getting you to fight on the back foot. Bilal Muhammad, people talk about like this was like an inexperienced Sean Brady, but I feel like this game planning could work for pretty much anyone else who has the skill set to employ it. Bilal Muhammad had confidence in his wrestling, and he disrespected the power of Brady coming back at him on the feet, and this led him to be able to control the center of the octagon. He took flush lands from Sean Brady on the chin, and they were cutting him. Yeah, there was like blood on Bilal Muhammad's face, but there was no substantial damage being done. And above all, he never engaged in the grappling. He was very striking heavy in this fight, and never once gave Sean Brady the opportunity to take the fight into his realm, which would have been on the ground. He's very pillow-fisted, and we know this. He was still boxing Sean up. Morales is a plainly frightening presence in the cage that people generally struggle to contain. He never fades straight backwards. He's very good at using his movement and angles to reset. He generally does not accept forward pressure as well, and he earns their respect with meaningful offense, not just flailing it. Michael Morales is very good at not overextending. He fights behind a solid jab. This was the best weapon that Bilal Muhammad used in his fight against Sean Brady. And it seems to me that Morales has become a more responsible striker with age. He did like to throw like the Superman punch, or like a Superman punch off the cage whenever he was a bit younger and more like reckless. And that was getting him taken down because people would level change off of that. He might go for something like this, but I just haven't seen him do it in his last couple of fights. I think that he likely realized that he can KO people without taking these risks. And if he just boxes with them, there's a good chance that he can still secure a finish that way. And aside from this, no matter when you're watching Michael Morales compete in the UFC octagon, he's always had nerves of steel. Like, this dude doesn't sweat in the cage. Like, maybe that's not indicative of the fact that he's not tripping in there, but I've never seen this guy sweat in a fight. Even whenever he's working, his output is higher than normal. He's super common there. In my opinion, I feel like Burns would have exposed Morales for not having the grappling to be competitive with the top of the division if that was actually something that served as like an Achilles heel of his. In general, Michael Morales' control of range makes closing the distance hard and wrestling a challenge for grapplers, to the point where we saw in the Jake Matthews fight, Jake Matthews didn't even try to wrestle because it didn't even make sense. Gilbert Burns was staying on the outside a bit more than he probably should have, instead of initiating clinches, because whenever he would enter range, he was getting zapped with hard jabs, check hooks, or a right or left hand, depending on what stance Michael Morales was in. He can fight pretty well out of both. This comes down to the clearest observation. Michael Morales weighed in 196 pounds 12 hours after the fight that he had with Gilbert Burns, which is nuts. Being big versus being dense is completely different. Michael Morales packs what looks to be a grotesque amount of muscle onto his frame. Sean Brady, if I hadn't told you right now, depending on how tapped in you are with the sport, that Sean Brady was around 200 pounds at the time of competing in the cage against Leon Edwards, you likely wouldn't have guessed. Maybe it's the tattoos making him look thinner, but even though there's a solid chance that he may be weighing more than Michael Morales in the octagon whenever they are fighting, I think that Brady at 5'9", which is generous, he may actually be like 5'8", 5'7". He's going to be getting dwarfed by Michael Morales. I don't think he's going to be completing any single or double legs because of this. And I don't think he's going to be racking up any substantial amount of control time either if he is taking down Michael Morales, because he's just going to be able to get up, because the cage is going to be right there as an assist. His big brother, the steel octagon fence, will be there to bail him out anytime this fight does hit the ground. Going back to the jiu-jitsu acumen of Michael Morales. And don't say anything about Sean Brady winning a grappling match against Craig Jones. He was stalling the whole time in top half guard, and there were no leg locks allowed in that UFC Fight Pass held event. Michael Morales, most of the time, whenever he does get taken down, has no issue with getting feet on hips. Or if he is the one wrestling and he gets sprawled, he can scramble really well to stand. But he better not be shooting any takedowns on Sean Brady. I mean, for reference, Jake Matthews is about 5'11" there. And he's standing closer to the camera where the photo was taken on the far left there. Look at how much larger Michael Morales appears to be than Jake Matthews in that photo. It's not a little bit, dude. It's like, that dude is, he's big. That's a big human. That's a large human. So that's going to take us down to foreseeable outcomes for this fight. I personally am part of the camp that believes that Morales is going to blow Brady's head smooth off shortly after round 1 begins. Alternate outcomes, I think, are going to be Brady is successful in forcing Michael Morales into the corner of the cage but cannot keep him there. Morales is going to escape to the center of the cage to continue boxing, and he's going to stay patient until a TKO is scored through earning a knockdown in some sequence, similarly to how Bilal Muhammad was able to set it up. Or Brady forces a breakdown out of Morales. Michael Morales gives his backer, gets tripped, wet blanketed, and then choked, and I just wasted my life making this presentation.